Good morning, beautiful people. We are live.
The sun is rising, the sky is blue. Good morning, grand risings, let's see what's new. It's that time of day for Sonia and crew. Good morning, grand risings. It's time to wake up with Sonia Poulton.
Or why is it not letting me come on the stage? Oh, goodness sake. What is it? This hates me. It hates me. Good morning to you. Monday, February the 3rd, 2025. It's just gone 1 minute past 9 a.m. GMT. Welcome to Wake Up with Sonia Poulton and guests. Thank you for being here despite all of my various technical glitches. One day I will get it all right. How are you all? Good morning, Brett and Abster and Crazy Bunny and Soul Sound. Our lovely mod Soul Sound has returned. And good morning, it's Life Jim and Lisa and Tara and Sharon and all of you wonderful people and Terry and Hamish. And I did see that we had, I think, lovely, is it Howie? Is it Howie who had done the beautiful picture for us of the Gazan child? I remember that. I did think I saw a comment earlier. Yes, Howard, good morning. First timer. I was the fella who painted the little Gaza boy that Sonia had on her show a couple of weeks ago. Always watch after the show has aired today. I'm set to enjoy live. Wonderful to have you with us, Howard. Absolutely wonderful. We loved your image. It was so profound and very touching. And good morning, John. Thank you very much for being here. And good morning to you all. And Dr. Robert. Dr. Robert had a tremendous response to coming on the show on Friday. So let's talk about it. First of all, welcome to the show that realizes you don't have to dress like a hooker or a porn star at the Grammys in order to get attention. Oh, yes, you know what I'm referring to, people. What's on Wake Up today? Well, I will be joined by journalist and commentator Ingrid Tarrant. She'll be chewing the fat with me on everything from farmers to Starmer to Trump and tax and beyond, perhaps, and beyond. And we'll also be joined by former BBC journalist Richard Jeffs, who will be with us to talk about the difference between Agenda 2030 and stakeholder capitalism. People often confuse the two. And Richard is going to join us to break down why they shouldn't be confused. Plus, we'll also be joined by counsellor and activist Shebear on Trump's two genders executive order and what it means to her. And what about the new Prince Andrew revelations? The fact that he continued to communicate with Jeffrey Epstein beyond what he has previously said, including what he told Emily Maitlis in that infamous BBC interview. Of course, this should come as no surprise to anyone who has been paying attention, but around here we are more interested in the real Prince Andrew story, the one that has been hidden. Plus, I'll be looking at the US plane crashes of the last week, the sad development of the missing Hungarian sisters in Scotland, and even more fresh doubts about Lucy Letby's conviction. When does it become too much to ignore, I wonder? I'll also be looking at celebrity trafficking, or as they like to call it, surrogacy. And as the Hollywood ritual known as the Grammys takes place, I will be deep diving into the death of Whitney Houston during Grammy weekend in 2012. And our final thought today is about stopping being shaped by other people. How what you are is your birthright. And it's time to celebrate it like you should. You're going to love this, so stick around. First of all, competition winners. As ever, I read all your entries after I had picked the winners, and I love and adore you, our viewers. I truly, truly do. We have the best of the best of the best, no contest, but there can only be two winners. There can only be two winners. And those two winners are Jill and Alaine, and lovely Robert, Dr. Robert, not a doctor, who's in the comments and was with us on Friday and kindly gave away 2 pots of his wonderful salve, said, "Hi, Sonia. Thanks for the winner's details. They will receive them next week. Will you please pass on my thanks to all the people who bought my salve? I've been making it all weekend to keep up with the demand, which so far has been over 25 pots. And it's all thanks to you for getting an extra 100 new subs. You people are amazing. Thank you so much. I truly, truly appreciate the support that you give our guests. Thank you, darling people. Thank you so much." Okay. How are we this morning? How are we? 4 minutes past 9. How you doing? Hello, Alice. Hello, Mama Bear. And hello, Healing the Silence and Eleanor and Stephen. Good morning to you all. And Cavan. What's that, Cavan? What did you say? Is that shape shifting then? What's happening? Well done, comp winners, says Dr. Robert in the comments. Right. In 2 days in the US, there have been 2 plane crashes. So if I've got that right, that was Wednesday and Friday, I believe. Have I got that right? But it was certainly over a period of a couple of days. Wednesday night comes as no shock to discover that the Black Hawk that was involved in the crash was performing a training exercise. That's right. The 2 planes, or the planes involved, one was on a military training exercise, another was on a medical rescue jet. Really odd stuff indeed. 3 black boxes, 1 from the Black Hawk helicopter and 2 from the American Airlines. This was Wednesday's crash, have been recovered from the wreckage in Washington's DC Potomac River. At least 41 bodies recovered so far. All 67 people involved in the mid-air collision near Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport are presumed dead. All 3 service members on board the helicopter have now been named by the Army, and they named the 2 men, but for some reason they withheld the name of the 3rd service member. Anyway, eventually it was released. Captain Rebecca Lobach, and she's identified as the 3rd Black Hawk pilot who died in the collision. And it was all very odd indeed, because they really didn't want to release her name. And you have to wonder why until you do a little bit more dig deeping. And it turns out, actually, she was somebody who was heavily involved in the Biden administration and has spent rather a lot of time around Congress, around the White House, having pictures, a number of different pictures taken with Joe Biden. But she was on that very tragic journey. And it would be really remiss of us, certainly in a program like Wake Up, not to acknowledge the amount of times there are training exercises when tragedies such as this take place. 7/7, there was a training exercise. 9/11, there was a training exercise. Manchester Arena, there was a training exercise. And don't forget, we had Colonel Towner Watkins with us last week. She was talking about Operation Gladio and about how many of these operations under Operation Gladio or operating in a similar way to Operation Gladio have training exercises that are taking place at the same time. So it's awful. We don't know really what's going on, but we shall see. Then there was the second crash, a medical crash, and that is equally absolutely tragic. A young patient, she just undergone a life-saving medical treatment in the US, was heading home to Mexico. She was on the Learjet Air ambulance, crashed in a fiery explosion in northeast Philadelphia on Friday night. So that was Wednesday night and Friday night. The aircraft was operated by Jet Rescue Air Ambulance. It was bound for Mexico. It had taken off from northeast Philadelphia airport when it plummeted almost immediately into a densely populated area, sadly killing 6, killing everybody on board. On board the flight was the girl who had had treatment, the girl's mother, a pilot, a co-pilot, a doctor, a paramedic, each of whom had dedicated themselves to essentially ensuring the safety of this girl's return after her life-saving treatment. She'd been a patient at Shriners Children's Philadelphia. She'd received care, was being transported back to her home country in Mexico. And the aftermath of the catastrophe was captured on harrowing drone footage. Absolutely harrowing. Terrible. What to make of it, people? What to make of it indeed. And thank you to everyone who has watched and shared my video about the disappearance of British mum Nicola Bulley, which I covered last Monday on the 2nd anniversary of her disappearance. If you would like to watch it, there's a link in the description below. Nicola was sadly reported missing on the 27th of January 2023. She was found 3 weeks later. A coroner ruled she had died by accidental drowning. Many people doubted that. And one of my patrons at Patreon, Paul, said women entering the river seem to have gone quiet after months of seemingly non-stop incidents. Smells rather fishy to me. And we have seen recently with one of the biggest cover-ups in UK history over Southport. You have to wonder what is really happening. Suicide doesn't seem to cut it, which brings me very sadly to another tragedy of women being found in water after a hunt for them. People told me their thoughts regarding Nicola Bulley and the mention of Eliza and Henrietta Husty, both 32. They're from triplets, and they have been living in Scotland for the last 10 years, and 2 bodies have been recovered. This is after a 3-week search, again, like Nicola Bulley, 3 weeks. And 2 bodies have been recovered in rivers after a search, the same period, as I say, as it took for Nicola Bulley. And the police say nothing from our extensive inquiries so far suggests that either sister left the immediate area after they were last seen on Tuesday, the 7th of January. There is also nothing to suggest any suspicious circumstances or criminality. The sisters had moved to Aberdeen about 10 years ago. They were said to be they'd saved up to buy a flat in the city. Their brother Joseph told the BBC that their other triplet sister Edith had spoken to the women by video call on New Year's Eve and had found them happy and cheerful. There was the weird messaging that took place with the landlord. The police said, the police said they had first been alerted to the disappearance of the sisters by their landlady, who received a text message from Henrietta's mobile phone at 2:12 a.m. on 7th of January that indicated the sisters would not be returning to the flat. The phone was then cut off and has not been active since. The girls' parents have been notified that bodies have been found, but we are waiting for an official identification. Very sad news indeed. This is something we're going to be looking at in more detail moving forward as more information emerges. But extremely sad news after that. Right, I'm going to bring in my first guest. She's a live wire, and I'm sure many of you know her. Let's bring her in. Here she is, the very lovely Ingrid Tarrant. Good morning, Ingrid.
Good morning, Sonia. How lovely to see you.
Oh, it's more lovely to see you, lass. Absolutely wonderful to see you, everybody. Journalist, commentator, Ingrid commentator Tarrant, as I was just going to say. She's an absolute live wire, is this woman. And yesterday we were having a discussion about people who are in the public eye who are prepared to speak out. And there's so few of us, but you are one of them. And which is wonderful to have you with us. Thank you for joining us this morning. So I just wanted to have a chat with you really about recent events, recent goings on. And I want to start off with sort of the obvious thing. And that is, if you have a choice, which one would you choose, Starmer or Trump?
Oh, Trump, every single time, no question.
Why is that?
He's a leader. First of all, he's a born leader. He's passionate about his country. Make America great again. Starmer is not doing that. He's doing the complete opposite. He's destroying this country. Trump passionately believes in what he's doing. And I love that. Whether you agree with him or not, it doesn't matter. If you've got that fire in your belly and you want to make things happen, and that's what he's doing and trying to do, then you can't knock it. I mean, I will go so far, and this sounds maybe controversial. I was thinking about this the other day, actually. How many leaders are there currently? I mean, Thatcher was a fantastic leader, but I'm talking currently. And I would say Trump, Putin. I also thought that going back, oh God, I've forgotten his name now. Do you know, I think I'm getting senior moments with names now.
I think, don't talk to me about names. I cannot remember names for the life of me. I can remember like really individual details about people, but their names is just like, I mean, I literally can remember people's birthdays, their star signs, everything.
Oh, you sound like me. What is it? I hope there's lots of other people out there that who am I thinking of? Cuba. I can see his face. Anyway, he was a leader back in the day. But there are
she's gone.
Vocal. Very few leaders in the world, but Trump is definitely up there.
Got you. So Starmer, let's start on Starmer first of all. It's been a very weird period, hasn't it? So obviously came into power in July on like 17% of votes, hardly any votes at all, but it was enough to put him into number 10. And since then, it really feels like we've been under the eye of the Crown Prosecution Service, doesn't it? An absolute punishing Prime Minister. What do you think about his response to what happened in Southport, Ingrid?
Well, it was very slow, and he didn't react. And he didn't react in the way that one would have imagined one would, any normal person. But he's now our Prime Minister. And, you know, the more you look into this, the more you realise there have been massive cover-ups, not just there, but in all situations like this. And you have to cast doubt on his position on this. Is he involved? Did he know about the cover-up?
Right.
I'm sure he did.
Right.
That's the thing. So, I mean, all suspicion goes on there. It's what you don't do that makes it more obvious what you have done. And that's how I see it with Starmer and his reaction.
Interesting, because there's obviously lots of rumours about him, of which we haven't been able to confirm. But what is absolutely apparent is that Starmer's Labour is very much pro-immigration. They claim, like Tories, that they're dealing with it, but they're not really. In fact, they're going to be furthering it, actually, by bringing in even more people who they consider to be more highly skilled than Brits. What do you think about this whole idea of bringing in people who are more highly skilled? When are we actually going to start to see that the people here are capable of being highly skilled?
First of all, I don't think that they will filter out the more highly skilled. I think it is just blanket. They're not checking the credentials. They're not even checking their past criminal records. So that's one thing. I don't disagree with having very highly skilled people coming in. This is what they do in Australia. You know, where there's a need to fill those gaps, they will source the best around the world and say, this is what's needed. Please come over. You're welcome. So set that aside. We actually, in this country, we do have very skilled people. I don't think they're being given the opportunities. I think the opportunities are going because we have to be all inclusive, etc., etc. Sadly, though, I think that the skills of the British people, or people living here and educated here, will go down and down and down because the education system is so bad. Right. It's so flawed. I remember, I love this. I remember going to see Lee Anderson at a talk. It was at a Conservative thing, a small dinner, and he was just standing up and talking. And the big takeaway that I got from that was, and I thought it was such a brilliant idea, he was saying, and it's absolutely true, it's a fact, that, you know, give me a boy and I'll give you a man, sort of thing. And so it's how you bring up a child, and it's not just in social skills, but it's really in education. So give them the right education and they will thrive. Right. Now in nursery school, they all kind of, you know, they get their reading, their writing, their maths, you know, sort of like that's pretty average. And then it starts to ebb off. And he was saying, if you could, and then you end up having the unemployed because they haven't achieved at school. And he was saying, if you could take children and put them in a private school education system, you would develop every child's skills. And therefore, they would be the future. You'd get your scientists and your artists and whatever. And I just think, yes, I see that. I absolutely see that. So we're failing more and more and more. We will be dependent probably on overseas people for the skills because we are failing in the system here, and we're not doing enough apprenticeships and things like that. But really, it starts here. We've got to look after the people here whose parents, grandparents, everything have been taxpayers. They've contributed to this country in a very significant way. And that's what we need to do, is to give them the support, the assistance, and bring back apprenticeships.
Do you feel, though, because obviously nothing happens by accident in politics, as we know, and we can tell what is going to be the result of an action, right? We're intelligent people. We understand how human psychology works. So it seems like a deliberate ploy to do down this country, to do down the people in this country. What does that feel like to you?
I think you're spot on, because I feel exactly the same. I despair, and I think, well, what are they doing? Why? Do you know, I don't think it even started with Starmer. I think it was Sunak. You know, when I look at the way that he was treating the country, or
it's been going on for years, hasn't it? Really?
It has.
Absolute years, decades even, I'd go so far as to say, actually, that they've been doing so.
I agree with you. I think the last person that was a leader that could really influence the way that this country was going was Maggie Thatcher. I know that sounds sort of like such an obvious thing, but honestly, that is it. There are others that.
Do you know what I absolutely love about this show is me and you couldn't be further apart when it comes to Margaret Thatcher, by the way. But the point is, but the point is, what I think is really important, and I think this is what's lacking today, is that people are allowed different points of view.
Oh yes, and agree to differ, but back it up. As long as you can back up your feelings, your beliefs, then how can you knock that person? So tell me, Sonia, this is so interesting. So who would be your equivalent of my Margaret Thatcher?
I don't think I have one. I mean, I'm as sort of anti-establishment as you're likely to encounter, to be fair. I was raised in a real anti-establishment household, very hippie-ish, very left. I'm not now. I'm politically homeless, but I've always been very anti-establishment. I would abolish monarchy. I'd abolish the political system as it stands. I'd make everything much more local, because I think that part of the problem that we've got is everything is centralized, and that then enables it to be digitalized as well. So I'd make things much more local to start with. But no, I'm not a great one for heroes or heroines, to be honest with you. Not a great one at all. But that doesn't mean I don't listen to you, because I do think it's really important. I think where we're going wrong in this world a lot of the time is that we have these purity spirals where we assume that what we say is the only thing that must be right. And we don't allow for other people's opinions. And I think it's so important to have other people's opinions, which is exactly that.
If anybody can back up something, I was very against fracking, and I'd looked into it for as far as I could. But of course, you're not going to really get. You're going to be pushed in the direction and be persuaded to be anti it, aren't you? If that's the way that it's going. But I was talking to somebody else, and we were just literally discussing that. She was very pro fracking, and I was anti. So I said. So I was listening to her, and she said, "No, you're wrong on that, and you're wrong on that, and this and this and this." And I went, "Oh, that's really interesting." So I said, "Right," I said, "I'm listening to you. I'm going to go back and I'm going to investigate further," which was quite hard because, as I say, you know, where the access to the normal information is going to steer you in that direction. But I went down and I went behind the things and really got sort of like deep into it, and it completely changed my mind.
Look at that.
So that's exactly, and that's illustrating your point. We all should listen to the other person. It doesn't mean that our opinion is right, because we might have missed something that doesn't make it right, and it's listen to the other person that puts it in its context.
Yeah,
so I'm very pleased with that. I'm a great listener.
It's really important. And the thing is, we also need to reach a stage, surely, where even if we can't agree as human beings, we can still not go to war. We don't need to go to war over it, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's respecting other people's opinions. And that's what we've lost. We've lost respect for one another.
Right, exactly. And I think that needs to take place. But here's the thing that I know that you and I are going to absolutely agree on, and that is the issue of inheritance tax, because I saw some of your tweets. And first of all, I think the whole thing should be abolished, not just the attack on farmers, but the whole thing. What are your thoughts?
I completely agree, because, you know, it's double taxation. We're taxed the whole way through. We've paid tax on that already at the beginning, all the way through. So it's taxing a taxed asset, and it's completely wrong. You know, in Norway, it was honestly about 6 months after my mother died, being in Norway and being Norwegian, and they abolished inheritance tax, and it was like, oh God, that was bad timing, you know. But I looked into it, and actually it's a little bit misleading, because although inheritance tax is abolished, you pay inheritance tax on the difference, the value of the assets at the time. So let's say it's a house. The house that we had, well, it was a big apartment in Oslo, was bought in something like 1960, and she died in 2011. And of course, the increase between then and when she died was massive. And so they tax you on nowadays on the balance, but that's wrong too, because if you know, for £4,000 back then could be 4 million now. So they don't take into account inflation and the value that's changed along the way. So it is misleading to say there's no inheritance tax in Norway and various other places that do that.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's curious. But here's the thing, though, is that obviously I think inheritance tax is wrong, full stop. But then it's additional with the attack on farmers, because it's not just about the inheritance tax. It's about depleting the farmland, isn't it?
It is, because with the farmers, if it's normal inheritance tax, which I, like you, absolutely am opposed to, say there's a house that can then be sold and you realize the liquid assets, you directly benefit. So it entitles you or enables you to buy your own home or to buy a new car because you've cashed in on your inheritance. But with farming, it's completely different. It's an asset, of course, it's a home, but you're not benefiting from it. You are continuing the hard work. So what's the sense in that? But of course, we all know why they want to do that, because they want to force farmers out of the farms. They're bribing them by paying them over the odds of the value, saying, well, we'll buy you up. You don't want to do this. You don't want to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning in the rain, the snow, the whatever. And they're taking it because it's, you know, there will be future generations that don't want to continue the farming tradition in their family, but they're being tempted a little bit too much. And of course, they're going to put solar panels on there, wind farms, etc., etc. Where's our food going to come from? We really have to protect the farms. I've been on demonstrations for the farmers, and actually, on one occasion, the first one was with the tractors, and I couldn't go. But the second one, I assumed it was going to be tractors each and every time. And because I live sort of, it's semi-rural where I live, but I'm surrounded by farmers and farmland. And I said to a local farmer, I said, come on, you know, you've got to do this for your farmers. Ooh. I'm nature, I love the countryside, and I respect farming and everything that it represents. And I said, come on, we're going up there, we're going in the tractor. Well, he hosed down his tractor, it was gleaming, no mud on the tires. He even cut out a huge board, because I'd given him some, like, you know, slogan things. So he sprayed on it, no farmers, no food, had clipped it to the front of his little digger front bit thing that comes up. I'm not very technical, am I? But you know what I mean. Anyway, we're trolloping up the A3 early, dark, early in the morning. And then we're getting a bit closer to London. We said, Ingrid, there are no tractors. And I went, oh, they're probably already there, coming from different places and, you know, whatever. Get even closer and said, there's still no tractors. And so, well, maybe they came the night before because there was a bit of snow and stuff like that. Anyway, we got to Westminster and there wasn't a tractor in sight. And I asked the policeman, I said, are there any tractors up there, you know, in Whitehall? They said, no, there's a couple that are parked, which there were. His mouth was going dry. I think we ought to go home and turn around and said, no, we're here now. Anyway, we listened, we parked it in a taxi rank. I asked a taxi driver, do you think anybody would mind? He said, no, I don't mind at all. And I said, but that's you. I said, what about all the other taxi drivers? He said, no, you park there. All the other taxi drivers will support it. They're not going to get angry that you've taken space on the rank. It was absolutely wonderful. I felt good about it.
Those vibrations are so wonderful when people come together. Do you know what? Even if you only have 5 people who are on the same page, the vibration that it creates is just absolutely wonderful, doesn't it? It propels you forward. That's the thing.
And it just shows, doesn't it? I mean, when speaking to that taxi driver, so I whizzed back to my farmer friend. I said, no, he doesn't mind. He's speaking for all the taxi drivers, you know, and it is that togetherness. It's just like every little pocket of society, you know, if you just like say, what do you think? I would say that, well, I don't know what the percentage is, but I would think the majority would be very much in favour of supporting the farmers against this awful.
You'd hope so, wouldn't you? But the thing
Yeah.
is, you know as well as I do, you've been in media an awful long time like me. You know how propaganda works. You know how things get twisted. You know how people, are told a certain thing and they believe that narrative while something else is operating on the, as a subtext. We know all of that is taking place. But thank you so much for joining us. I'm so glad we managed to get you on eventually. I should tell everybody at like 8:20 this morning, Ingrid and I were doing tech, and between the pair of us doing tech is kind of hilarious, actually.
We got there in the end, Sonia. I knew we would. We
absolutely did. So lovely having you with us, Ingrid. Thank you for throwing your dynamite in the middle of our comments about Margaret Thatcher this morning. Absolutely hilarious to see. Thank you so much, everybody. This is the wonderful Ingrid Tarrant. Take good care of yourself. Have a wonderful week. Lovely to see you. Lovely to see her. Yes. Yes, she did, didn't she? She threw that stick of dynamite at you all. You're all in uproar about Margaret Thatcher. I did never like Margaret Thatcher. I did actually protest outside Margaret Thatcher's funeral, but people would have a problem with that as well. You can never do things right, can you? Sometimes you just get it wrong for attempting to do things right. Before I bring in our next guest, this is interesting. On Friday, I was talking about the sheer volume of bank branches that are closing. And I also said to you that part of the problem is obviously that so many of us are using the app. 20 million people are using banking apps at this moment in time. What happened on Friday? And I said, I'm as guilty as anybody. What happened on Friday? Barclays, my bank, crashed. 3 days, 2.5 days it was out. You couldn't get on the app. And it went so far as Barclays suggesting to their customers, that if they needed to use food banks, they should. Can you believe that? Which makes what we're about to talk about next even more important, because it's all going in the same direction. We need to be absolutely aware that we cannot allow ourselves to be in a position where we're relying on one situation. Yes, all by design. Yes, use food banks. That's what they said, Girl on Fire. Unbelievable. That was their unbelievable advice. Absolutely outrageous. They said that it's now been resolved. They don't know what the IT glitch was. But the point is that it happens. We know it happens. We cannot allow ourselves to be controlled by a central bank digital currency. Lloyd's Halifax crashes today. Cash is king, says Christine. It certainly is. Let's bring in our next guest who probably understands that more than most, frankly. Let's bring him in. Here he is. Good morning, Richard Jeffs. How are you?
Good morning, Sonia. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Well, it's great to have you with us, Richard. I was looking at a news pilot that you've produced, which actually I think has all the legs to become something. It was actually great to watch it. And it was, and I'm going to put a link in the description, everybody, so you can watch it, because it is an absolute brilliant explainer in many respects about what is going on at WEF, what is going on in terms of stakeholder capitalism. And Richard is your man for this job. Former BBC journalist, you're a broadcaster, of course. You've become very interested in Agenda 2030 and stakeholder capitalism, haven't you, Richard?
That's right. Today I'm going to talk about the differences between Agenda 2030 and stakeholder capitalism.
People confuse them all the time. I mean, they assume that it might be one and the same thing, but it's not at all, is it?
It is actually, yeah, but it's stakeholder capitalism. So Agenda 2030 is stakeholder capitalism, and in fact, I've got a report here that I'll quickly
go for it.
Show you. So it's the United Nations, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is the document that you would have seen with all the circle of all the different colours around the outside. Now, stakeholder capitalism is a system, a political system that was enacted in 2020 by the World Economic Forum. It was pioneered, it was proclaimed to be pioneered by Klaus Schwab. He explains that himself in the early 70s, and he founded the World Economic Forum to enact stakeholder capitalism globally. And stakeholder capitalism is just essentially global communism. It's a global government which shifts authority away from shareholders to the World Economic Forum elite members called key stakeholders. So Klaus Schwab in 2020 launched the Great Reset plan. It's called the Great Reset of Capitalism. It's a 10-year plan to transition us to full stakeholder capitalism. And then all of the World Economic Forum's strategic partners, such as the United Nations, have got these different agendas to essentially accelerate our transition to stakeholder capitalism and get us there by 2030. So the Agenda 2030 is actually stakeholder capitalism. That's essentially what it means. And that's the United Nations plan for helping to drive us. The slogan for stakeholder capitalism. Can you see my screen at the moment, guys? No,
I can see
that's
you
fine.
perfectly. I just wanted to bring up an image from your from your news pilot about Klaus Schwab, because I think it fits very nicely to it. I don't know if you can see that, but I can see you absolutely fine.
Perfect. Okay, so the slogan for stakeholder capitalism is people and planet. That means a few things. People means all the inclusive ideas that we see being propagated around the world at the moment. Trans, black people are oppressed, and essentially what that means is that they're oppressed by free market or shareholder capitalism, which is the system that we have here in the West, or had in the West before 2020. And the idea is that that's making people oppressed, and that we need a new political system, which is global communism, to make people more inclusive. It's just Marxism. It's been used by tyrants for generations to shift nations to communism. So that means the people part of that slogan. And then the second part is planet, which is climate change. They're saying that climate change poses an existential threat, and unless we give up all our use of oil, which means that no more travel by plane, no more travel by owning cars, no more travel generally, because everything mainly powered by fossil fuels or oil, then we will all perish. And then the two policies of stakeholder capitalism is diversity, equity, inclusion. So that's for the people part. That's to help make people more inclusive and essentially what that does, it discriminates against the alleged oppressor, the white man, who's dominating the workplace apparently, and it gives the people who are oppressed more opportunities. And then the climate change problem, the sustainable problem, is net zero, and that means banning all fossil fuels or oil by 2030. So we've got stakeholder capitalism with its two main policies called inclusive and sustainable, but that also means people and planet. So that's the slogan. So I'm just going to open up the United Nations document, the 2030 document.
Good.
And
the Sustainable Development Goals. Yes.
That's right. Yeah. So the first sentence here in the document is, this agenda is a plan of action for people and planet. That's the first words in the document. So what it's saying is that this plan is for stakeholder capitalism. So when we talk about Agenda 2030, what we're actually talking about is stakeholder capitalism. That's the end goal.
Got you.
So part of my mission now is to encourage people to start talking about stakeholder capitalism rather than Agenda 2030 as the root cause.
That's an interesting but subtle distinction. I've got you. Right.
And one of the very main reasons for that as well is because I think it'd be more effective. Because stakeholder capitalism, we can prove, or in my documentary called Stakeholder Capitalism, I've proven irrefutably that we're being transitioned undemocratically and discreetly to a global authoritarian political system called stakeholder capitalism, which is essentially global communism. It shifts authority to Xi Jinping, who's the head of the Chinese Communist Party, and the heads of our governments have been committing treason. Now that is irrefutable in my film, and that's a solid narrative that we can use to make hard allegations towards people like Starmer. You're transitioning us to stakeholder capitalism. So if we all got on board with that narrative, it'd be much more effective than saying we reject Agenda 2030. Because when you break that down, that conversation is a difficult conversation to have with somebody who's not awake.
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely. Can I ask you a quick question in the comments? Ask Richard, is stakeholder capitalism another name for feudalism? Would you say it was?
Well, there's lots of different names that you can call this. So there's also, communitarianism, there's fascism, and there's all kind of different names. But I would say, I think the easiest way to describe it is just the way they describe it. So shareholder capitalism, free market capitalism is a system we've had here in the West. You've also got state capitalism, which is
Right.
and then you've got stakeholder capitalism, which is a new it's an economic system, but the political system that you're referring to is an authoritarian system, and it does show characteristics of fascism and this political system called communitarianism and so forth. But
Right.
essentially, the way I describe it is just global communism, because it's an easy thing for people
I
to
agree
get their
with
head
you.
around.
Yeah, I've got you. I've got you. Okay.
So yeah, so that's one message today. I'm continuing to create content. I'm now creating Yellow Live, which is a media platform. It'd be a media channel. I'd love to talk to you more about that at some point, Sonia. But ultimately, what I'm trying to do at the moment is just get this message out, and I'm really frustrated at the moment because people like yourself have given me a platform and given me a voice. But I
you need
really
other
want to amplify this
platforms.
message.
You need other platforms. Why is there a reluctance, do you think? There's obvious reluctance that you'd find within mainstream or legacy media, where we both come from, obviously, because they're sort of up to their eyeballs in this kind of stuff, obviously. But are you saying that there are other bigger platforms that could do with platforming what you're saying and they're not? Is there a reluctance there?
Absolutely, yeah, and also it's just getting through to the people that do have that influence as well. So it's, I'm at the bottom at the moment. I've come into this with no social media following, so I haven't really been on social media at all until last year, and now creating this content and getting it out there is difficult, because it's hard to get anyone with a big network to share it. And I don't know what the main reason is. Maybe it's competition. It's a very competitive industry now.
But I didn't see you like that. I saw you as somebody. See, so I do think there is a lot of people who are like, oh, his competition, he's coming up with another. But no, first of all, I believe that the cream generally rises to the top anyway. Certainly out here now, we're like in this marketplace where if what you're doing is good, it should eventually get heard. And what you're doing is good. I mean, as I say, the pilot that you did is excellent. It's of a standard that you would expect from legacy media, but you are talking alternative stuff that wouldn't be discussed in legacy media. So I think it might just be a process of just keep showing up and doing it. The best advice my daughter ever gave me, and I come from legacy media, when I was like doing my own thing, my daughter just said, you have to just keep showing up and just keep producing content, and eventually it will turn. And honestly, Richard, that is the reality. When we started this live stream, we've only been going 5 months now. We were lucky if we were getting, I don't know, 300-400 on the live stream. Well, I can see now we've got 1,400 watching us live on YouTube. Then we've got hundreds on X. I can't even see it. But the point is it is kind of like build it and they will come. Kind of. I think what you've got is such good enough, good quality, good standard material. But yeah, it could absolutely be that people see you as competition. But the point is, aren't we supposed to be amplifying all of this? Because we're on the same page. That's the point. We're on the same page. I understand your frustration. I get it.
So the next part of the journey, really, to kind of get that message out there, because it's not just stakeholder capitalism. Over the last couple of years, I've exposed the full plan, the Great Reset full plan, what's going to happen over the next 5 years, which is going to be the most terrifying part of our transition. As you mentioned, I've got Yellow Live, which is something I'm producing at the moment. So you saw the news show, and that was just a fast turnaround, just a pilot, just to show what we can do, essentially with no budget. It was something I'd written, something I'd shot, something I just kind of edited quite quickly. But essentially, what that is news that's or current events reported in the context to the Great Reset transition to stakeholder capitalism.
Brilliant.
So what that means is, if there's something happening around the world, how does that fit into the bigger plan? Let's talk about it from a very awake top level. So that's what Yellow Live, the news, was. And then we'll obviously want to do, debate shows and other bits and pieces there. So I'm in the process of growing that. And then I'd like to do a road show, which I'd love to talk to you about again, Sonia. And we'll go around the country and we'll find people like yourself that have got big audiences and you know, a lot of knowledge, and we'll show the film. So we'll sell tickets, show the film, and then we'll have a Q&A after with the audience and with people like yourself who can talk about how do we solve this problem. So that's the next thing I want to do to try and get the message out. Yeah, so and then the third thing as well is then I'll be crowdfunding Yellow Live and being able to hopefully try and create a that new media channel then. So that's my
Build
task
it and
really.
they will come. Good on you. It's a good task for 2025. So more power to your elbow. We will absolutely support you around here. We're on the same page. I want people to know about this. Absolutely. They need to be aware of it. They need to understand the context of it, which is what you will enable them through your broadcast. So tell me, because you've covered this in your first pilot about Trump being at WEF last week. Obviously, he was broadcast into WEF. It might have been the week before. Now I'm losing track of weeks. But he appeared to basically be saying up yours, up yours, up yours to them. What did you take away from it all?
Well, I think that Trump, Kennedy and Musk are a good thing. I think that they are rejecting stakeholder capitalism, but I don't think they are fully aware of what the full plan is and that what the objective is to, you know, to get us to stakeholder capitalism. So that's, you know, if they had this knowledge that I have, and or anyone in the UK that have got that, you know, that position of influence, I think it could be very damning for them. So I'd love to be able to, you know, share my narrative with people like, you know, Musk and Kennedy and Trump, but ultimately, yeah, he's gone there and he's rejected the two main policies of stakeholder capitalism, which is all the diversity.
Bells on though, didn't he? He was like, you know, really quite abrasive, wasn't he, about it? Apologies, Richard. Carry on.
Yeah, sure. He went there. I think he could see that those policies were being pushed by members of the World Economic Forum. I don't know whether he fully understands as I say, the full plan for transitioning us to stakeholder capitalism, inclusive and sustainable ideas, or people and planet, or you know, the DEI and net zero policies, all the same thing. They're all designed to make us want stakeholder capitalism. That's how communism works. It's propaganda to indoctrinate us to want a more authoritarian political system, because it'll make us feel even more inclusive or make us feel safe in some way. So he's gone there on the big stage, and he's essentially rejected the DEI policies and all the net zero policies, which is a big, you know, stick your fingers up to Klaus Schwab and all the, well, you know, WEF stakeholders. So that was really good to see. Yeah, so that will be very damning for the World Economic Forum's agenda to transition us to stakeholder by 2030. However, that's not the end of it, especially, you know, here in the UK, we've still got Starmer, who's pushing us to stakeholder capitalism. The big problem we have is that the stakeholders, or the key stakeholders at the World Economic Forum, they own the media, they own the financial system, and if they crash the financial system and they continue to propagate, you know, climate change propaganda, these ideas to indoctrinate people, they still have a lot of clout and they can still manipulate where we go. So it's very good to see what's happening over in the US. It's good to see that Musk is calling out all of the censorship, and Zuckerberg now has come out and said where he won't be censoring anymore. But Zuckerberg, they've still got a plan up their sleeve, and later on I'll show essentially that Zuckerberg is in the series I've got evidence that shows that Zuckerberg is a major force in this transition. He's essentially leading a lot of the UBI, the Universal Basic Income part of the transition. Every stakeholder has a specific responsibility, an agenda within the Agenda 2030 plan for stakeholder capitalism. So yeah, it's good news, but we've still got the worst to come.
We've got to be careful with those technocrats, haven't we? Sugarpuff says, who are the stakeholders?
The stakeholders are the heads of most Fortune 500 companies, and they are the heads of all G20 countries before Trump got in, and they are the heads of the UN, the EU, and WHO, and other non-profit or non-government NGO NGO organizations, non-governmental organizations. So the heads of those organizations have all, they've either been indoctrinated by Klaus Schwab on his Young Global Leaders program to become ambassadors for stakeholder capitalism. That's mainly in the corporate sector. They're the heads of the Fortune 500 companies, but the heads of the governments have been through the Young Global Leaders program earlier on in their careers, and then placed into positions of power before 2020 and ready to enact the Great Reset plan for Klaus Schwab. And then the same with the NGOs, the heads of, the UN, etc. They're all strategic partners of the World Economic Forum. So it's being led by Klaus Schwab. It's his plan, the Great Reset, and everyone else are essentially players and supporting his transition. That's their purpose for their specific position, the heads of those organizations.
Jake is asking about the 2045 initiative. Does this all overlap?
I don't know the Gender 2045 initiative. I need to brush up on that one.
We've been hearing it over the last few weeks. What they've often been saying, certainly like Ed Miliband. Obviously, Ed Miliband is the UK's Mr. Net Zero Green Agenda lunatic, funded by the Rousing family, who are also eco-fascists. But they have been increasingly saying over the last couple of weeks that they're not going to meet the 2030 targets. And so they're shifting it to later, saying 2045 now. No. So,
Agenda 2030 still is still 2030.
Very much in place, right? So what does this suggest to you? Does this suggest to you that they're playing games with us because we're catching on?
I think that because we are, there's a narrative now to say, look, by 2030, if this happens, then, we're not going to be able to, we're going to experience poverty. We're not going to be able to eat our homes. And, there's this opposing narrative now that's very strong, especially now Trump's got in and rejected all the climate change ideas, that I think that, they're making it a little bit more easy to swallow. Let's not talk about this so much. It's not an immediate problem. We're going to push it back another 15 years. That's what I imagine that they're doing. But ultimately, 2030 is still the goal, and they are committed to transitioning us to full stakeholder capitalism by 2030, because if they don't, then they will get exposed and they will get tried for treason. So they've all put all of their chips in, and they're gunning for that end point. So and they're all getting old. Klaus Schwab,
they can't last much longer.
They want to see stakeholder capitalism enacted before the end of because it's Klaus Schwab's entire life's work, and that's his goal. He wants to see this enacted.
It's going to be interesting, I think. And I think the more that people understand what's going on, the better it is for all of us, because it is absolutely insane. It's been my discovery that since 2020, when Schwab was coming out with all of this stuff, Build Back Better and the Great Reset, and people, even up till today, say that's all a conspiracy theory. It's like, there's a book. What are you talking about? It's extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, you come from legacy media, Richard. Does it shock you how ignorant so many people still appear to be when everything is happening so obviously in plain sight?
It's not ignorance, unfortunately. It is pure indoctrination.
Right.
So people have been brainwashed to believe that the government or a larger group of people, or a more centralized group of people, are taking away our freedoms is a dangerous right-wing conspiracy theory, and that's a belief that they have. So it doesn't matter how much evidence you provide them, whether you show the film to them, and of course this is a spectrum. So you've got people who are heavily indoctrinated, who will go out to the street and glue their hands to the road to try and ban all oil. Do you know what that means when you're doing this, or chucking super paintings? But they don't. They're so indoctrinated that we have to ban all oil because that's what the propaganda has done to them. And you can show them the film, which is the film that I made called Stakeholder Capitalism, which you can view on yellow.forum for free. You can show them that, and what I've done with that film is take the reports and talks from the World Economic Forum, and it's them who's telling us that we're transitioning to stakeholder capitalism. It's irrefutable because it's them who's explaining it. It's not coming from me, but it will conflict the beliefs that they have that this is a conspiracy theory, so they cannot acknowledge it, they cannot accept it. When you show them evidence, that I get people in a corner when I'm showing them this, and then some people can see, yeah, they accept that it's happening, but then they think, well, it must be a good thing then. And then you ask them, well, so you agree that a transition to another political system, an authoritarian global political system, you think that an undemocratic transition is a good thing? Can you think of any historical, any times throughout history when we've transitioned away from free market capitalism to an authoritarian system throughout the world, another nation? Look at China, look how it's turned out for them. Just cannot get past that idea that it's a bad. That's all to do with indoctrination, and that's the key recipe of communism, by the way. That's what drives this. It's a cult, and it all relies on indoctrinating people to want it.
That's exactly it. Phobile says, I struggle to believe Trump is not aware he's president. I mean, I'm pretty sure he is aware, isn't he?
It's just that he's just not talking about, none of them are talking about stakeholder capitalism.
But that doesn't mean they're not aware of it, though, does it?
It doesn't, but it is. If you want to remove this, that's the first thing you will turn around and say. You would say that Biden's transitioning us to another political system. It's called stakeholder capitalism. He's doing it undemocratically. He shouldn't be doing that. That's treason. There it is. It's really easy. And stakeholder capitalism isn't very well understood. It's a complex system, and the narrative that the stakeholders propagate for stakeholder capitalism is that it's an economics form of governance. It's there to put some extra pressure on companies to make them more inclusive and sustainable, and then it has an ESG score to make companies.
They're sort of ignoring the big elephant in the room, aren't they, with all of these great changes that they're saying are going to take place, but they're ignoring the most central thing that binds it all together.
Absolutely, yeah. And people like Musk have rejected ESG and so forth, but they're not actually talking about the bigger picture. What is it that's going on in the world at the moment? What's happening? They're talking about what's happening in specific silos, what I call like the semantics of our transition to stakeholder capitalism. But my message now is that we just got to take a step back and say, all of these things, whether it's a trans argument or the trans agenda or climate change, these are all mechanisms to try and get us to stakeholder capitalism by 2030, and that's global communism. And that's a narrative that's really easy to understand, and you can make hard accusations towards people about that. Can you imagine if a journalist or anyone from Reform, for example, was to make those allegations to Starmer in Parliament, and then the journalist picks up and says, well, what's stakeholder capitalism? So, and then you can unravel it, and then you can have a discussion about
well, that is a good point, actually. That's a really good point. What are Reform, who are supposed to be set apart from the other political parties, what are they actually doing regarding this issue?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not following them closely, but I would love an audience with some members of them just to say, look, there is this, I've got this evidence here. You can use it to make hard accusations and expose all the corruption here.
There's no way they don't know about it. There's no way. I refuse to believe that Nigel Farage, Richard Tice don't know about the Great Reset, about stakeholder capitalism. That would shock me if they didn't. I would consider that remiss in their role.
I think that they haven't been able to put it in a narrative that's really simple to be able to make those allegations, because just like you say, if they stood and said, oh, he's leading the Great Reset, it's going to sound like a conspiracy. So it's all about the narrative, and that's why I'm encouraging as many people as I can to watch the film, because the evidence is there, and once you can use that evidence and refine a narrative, then that's strong, because I'm finding it very successful at the moment. I'm being very direct and hard with my accusations, and it's very hard for anyone to be able to conflict that. So, and part of what I'm doing now with a new podcast and so forth is actually inviting people who are indoctrinated by stakeholder capitalism, by the ideas, and bringing them on the show, showing them some of the evidence, have a conversation, and then be able to show how we can push back against these ideas and win these arguments against people who are indoctrinated. But I actually, in terms of a revolution that's happening, I don't think the solution is to wake people up. I think, leave them behind. We're a big enough group of people, the people who are awake. We need to come together, and we all need to have a common plan, and drive this revolution, just like what's happening with the white people and the people supporting Trump and that in the US. We could do the same thing here, and then everything needs to change at that point. Then once we expose all of the tyrants for what they're doing, and hopefully start to make accusations for treason, everything needs to change, because every system is rotten to its core, from the education system to the judicial system. It's all rotten, and we need a complete reform in all of the systems. So yeah, but at that point, I mean, we're not going to have much luck waking people up because of how entrenched the indoctrination is. Indeed. So it's about us to come together and be strong and all have a common narrative.
Big enough number.
And drive that. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Howard said, keep up the great work, Richard. Indeed. HK Very said, I totally agree. Yes, it is. Absolutely. This, of course, is Richard Jeffs. Please check out his work on Yellow Live. I'm going to put a link in the description to the pilot. Watch it. And honestly, if you want your neighbors or your friends or your family to understand how this is working, just watch that pilot. You'll get it. And David Curtin makes an appearance as well, which is lovely to see him. Richard, thank you.
It's on yellow.forum. So Yellow Live is a new channel on yellow.forum.
Yellow.forum. Got it. Yes, I will make sure that I put the link in. I promise. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. The thing what I really think is really appealing about what you do, Richard, is you take really complex ideas and you distill them to a way that is accessible to the masses. And that is what we need. That is exactly what we need. And you do it. So it's going to be fine. We've got this. Do you not worry about a thing. True about indoctrination. Absolutely. Great X account, Richard. People are already following you just from listening to you talk here today, which is absolutely great. Thank you, Richard. Take good care of yourself.
Thank you. I look forward to speaking to you soon, Sonia, as well.
Definitely. Take care.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Lovely to talk to him. Yes, absolutely lovely to talk to him. Very knowledgeable man. And the thing is I do like the way that he articulates it, because he makes it so easy and accessible. Right. I need to just quickly broach the subject of tax. On Friday, I talked about paying my tax bill, or rather a very, very kind Wake Up viewer paid my tax bill, and I received an email yesterday very cross with me. And I understand why this person was upset with me. They wanted me to withhold my tax and follow more the Chris Coverdale probity approach. Now, here's the thing. As I told this person, there's only so many fights I can take on at any one moment in time. Do bear in mind, I've been in the High Court, for example, for the last 5 years. I don't need any additional stuff other than Wake Up at this moment in time. And I definitely don't need to be dealing with the tax man chasing me. Right? I definitely don't. And thank you, Rediscover. I appreciate that. And so the thing is that I will put a link. I think I might already have put a link actually to probity in the description, because I do really like what Chris Coverdale and co are doing. I really do. And when I feel that there is a substantial model there that could get behind me withholding tax, I will absolutely get involved. Yeah, they'll jail me, Brett. They will. You have to pick your fights, play the game. I mean, that is the thing, is that I do understand why this person got upset. I really do get it. I absolutely get it, because I hate the idea that my taxes are going to pay for illegal wars and all manner of things that I absolutely loathe and detest. But I need to also be here. I need to be here. And so I have to weigh up the pros and cons of what I should and shouldn't do at this moment in time. They'll bankrupt me. Yep. Absolutely. Where is the link, please? Which link are we talking about, Christine? Sorry, which link are we talking about? Pick and choose your battles. I have to. And that is the reality. But here's what I love about around here is that our viewers do not have a problem in saying to me, well, I don't like that. I disagree with that, because all opinions are welcome, right? Yes, Simon, I can't afford to give them an angle. I really can't. But all opinions are welcome. And I absolutely did appreciate that person saying to me, I was disappointed in that, because that's absolutely fine, because it gave me an opportunity to explain my position. Thank you so much, Samantha. I appreciate that. Heatless curls. Heatless curls. Went to bed with curlers in. And this is what I ended up with. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, Humphrey, tax was meant to be a temporary measure during wartime. Well, my opinion today. Thank you, Ficus. I withheld my council tax for 4 years. I had to give up for my sanity for now. Got you. Got you indeed. Right. Thank you, Abster. All appreciated. I'm going to bring in my next guest, something completely different. Let me have a glug of water first of all. Marcus, I so have to keep my vibrations up because it's not just about me. It's about all of us, right? It's about all of us. Let me bring in our next guest. Here she is. Hello, Shebear. How are you, darling?
I'm good. Thank you, Sonia. Lovely to see you again.
Lovely to see you too. You wrote to me after, well, Trump's various executive orders, but one in particular caught your attention, which was this whole thing. And the thing is that whether you like Trump or don't, there are certain things that he's saying that have to make you go, wow, he's the only person actually saying that in that position. And the one thing that seemed to alert you was the whole issue to do with two genders. Now, of course, what we've had a huge period of time where men were called women, women were called men, people's passports were changed, people's identities were changed. You've got different markers on people's passports than they actually should be. But this is a story that you can really relate to. Why can you relate to it so much?
Basically because of my background, sort of being a life coach and having quite a diverse journey myself. I thought it's, it gets you thinking. And I think a lot of these topics that are coming up at the moment are to get us thinking, and for some people it could cause division. But we've got to, again, come together and agree to disagree, as you're saying. So, we can look at these subjects and let's keep an open mind. My beliefs and my experiences are my beliefs and my experiences in a vast ocean of beliefs and experiences of everything else. So, I've had, that experience with myself, with young people, with, people that have, fallen foul of misgenderization and so on. So that's why I'm quite interested to put the subject forward, as it were.
And I think it's an important one. And for those who aren't familiar, Shebear's been with us before. Well, she's many things. She's an author, coach. She's a peace officer, a very good peace officer. And I think your point is, and I think it's important, first of all, I've always been against gender conformity, right? I think people should really, honestly, I genuinely do believe that people should look however they want. As long as people aren't trying to make me believe what my own eyes are telling me, then we're all fine. Don't trespass on my position and we're absolutely fine. And I grew up in the 60s. I went through the 80s, for goodness sake. It was as gender non-conforming as you could get, right? Like today is positively stale compared to what was going on in the 80s and 90s. And I think your point is important. And that is, one, we should let children mature before anything drastic is decided. And that's what's been going wrong in the UK. They've been putting these children on these puberty blockers, on that gender pathway. And it's proven that if they get them on a gender pathway, more often than not, they go through to transition. So we need to leave children be, don't we?
Yes, definitely. Let children do their job of being children and playing and growing and so on. And later on, they can blossom into whatever they need to blossom into. So, for example, when I was a kid, I hated dolls. I loved cars. I loved train sets. I was out across the woods and so on. And you could call me a tomboy. And a lot of the time, when others were having like long hair and high heels, I was having short, spiky hair with, kickers. It was the 80s was a lovely time. I used to walk around the town dressed as Boy George. I had glasses on, no one recognized me and so on. It was brilliant. It was just fluid. You could just be yourself. You didn't have to worry about a pronoun and so on. You was what you was. And sometimes people said a lad to me, and I just, doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, but it's also the other thing that you said, which is really important, is it's not a problem to acknowledge and honor that we have male and female in us. And that is really what we should be embracing more, I think. Because people shouldn't automatically assume that just because you're a woman that you must wear makeup, that you must have long hair or any of those things. That should be so outdated by now. I can't believe how regressive this has all become, that we've got it down to a situation where Mermaids, the charity, for example, they had it that girls like pink, boys like blue. This is so like prehistoric. It's not even a joke, is it?
Exactly. And back in the day, it was the opposite way round. Boys had pink and girls were blue, and they just swapped it round. So, it is, they've just changed a lot of things. And we should go back real far back, when we were just allowed to go and play in the woods, go and put little mice in our pockets and bring them home and so on. None of this rubbish now. The kids are just not allowed to grow and find themselves before all this stuff is ploughed onto them.
Yes.
For an example, I had nowadays, I know of a very good trauma clearing coach, and she works in a school, and there was a girl who wanted to sort of be a boy and dress as a boy and so on. And so she had a few sessions with the coach, and it just came up that she was quite happy just dressing as a boy.
Right. Right. But in the wrong hands, she's on a gender pathway, right? And she's being shipped off left, right, and center. And the thing is that the other thing that you said that really concerned me was that at one stage, you yourself wanted to transition. Now, with your awareness, but you still felt that societal pressure. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. I was actually in quite a challenging civil partnership. And I'd sort of lost my role because my partner wanted to be all roles in the household, wanted to be the main breadwinner, wanted to be the mother, wanted to be everything. So I lost my identity, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember that as a kid, someone asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I did actually say a man.
Wow.
I was only 6 and so on. I could see all the, advantages.
The right.
Man, because they had the power, they had the freedom and so on. And it wasn't until sort of, more recently, I'd gone through, I was working in a school as an IT technician. I had short hair, I had a shirt and tie, I was suited and booted, and I was just being myself. There was no judgment, and I looked into it and so on, and I thought, oh yeah, peeing standing up and so on, that sounds good. And then I thought to myself, what am I doing? I hate taking tablets, and I've never been under anesthetic, and I never want to be.
Wow.
So I just come to the conclusion, okay, it's the situation I'm in. I'm not finding I've got a role. I just have to push myself forward. And that's where I came Shebear, because I was a strong, powerful creature. And it didn't matter. It didn't matter if I like wearing men's clothes with deep pockets and jackets that you could put your phone in and so on. Yeah. And the conclusion I come to, and this would be good for those that are into the reincarnation and so on, that in my past lives I was mainly a man, and it was that energy coming through, and energies and traumas come through from our past lives and so on, that I think put me on my track of that sort of going off on that path of wanting to be a man. And then once I realized that, I thought, yeah, I have been in past lives. I've been leaders, I've been this. We've all been, different things in past lives. And again, that can come into the children now. Traumas can come through, they can be inherited and
generational trauma. Absolutely, it can. Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's interesting, when you look at the visual of us, you arguably are much more free than I am. And the reason I say that is because I am conforming to how society wants me to look to a certain degree, right? And I realize that about myself, okay? I realize, and I still choose to do it, right? Not to a degree where I'm having somebody cutting up my face or anything, or stuff shot into my face or anything else like that, right? But still, to a degree, I am still conforming to how society wants me to look, and that is female, feminine, a certain way, right? And so when you look, let's be honest, let's be really, really honest. When you look at somebody like me, what do you think?
Femme lipstick and all that, and nails and so on. But we shouldn't really generalize,
because we should be able to be able to look any way we want, right? And that is, I like myself with and without makeup. For the most part, I'm without makeup, but just kind of like on here, because actually that is kind of part and parcel of having to do this, of being broadcasting. But both the way we look should be acceptable. And I've been in certain circles where people look like you and they're angry with me because they feel that I'm letting the side down. But you must have encountered that.
It's a mad world, those societies. I tend to come away from it all because everybody just judges everyone else. I've had children, I've been married, I've been through it all. I've seen both sides, and I think that's what makes people well-rounded, and we shouldn't judgment is not in my vocabulary. It really doesn't need to be a word. Acceptance, respect within free will and free choice is my new motto.
We love a bit of that. So do you think that Trump's executive order is going to kind of clatter around the world? Do you think it will ultimately impact us here? Because we're still deep in gender woo-woo in the UK, deep in it. We're captured. Our government is still captured, although bit by bit, people are separating out from Stonewall, which is also interesting. But do you think that Trump is going to have an impact on the UK?
Well, definitely. I see it as we're going to go into a whole new era. And Trump is just, he's just there. He's a player. He's a placeholder. He's helping to bring the new world in. But I do have one point.
Go for it.
Say about the two genders. I want to put a bit of a swerve on the conversation.
Go for it.
There are people who are born with both genders. There are people who are born with the male chromosomes, but their testosterone hasn't kicked in.
True.
So they appear female. So, I think there needs to be a little bit more leeway because, there are these indeterminate individuals.
So you're talking about intersex, aren't you there? Intersex. Yes. But the thing is what happened was that the gender lobby, they tried to hijack the issue of intersex. I've interviewed quite a lot of people to do with intersex, and they're absolutely appalled the way the gender lobby tried to use them. But I do take your point, is we have to acknowledge that there are some people, a small percentage, but nonetheless, people exist who do not fit into very easy little boxes. That is the reality. And we have to allow for that as well, don't we? And be more open-minded. Yeah, Timmer, truth. She's the woman's talking truth, and we love that. Brilliant. We do love that. It's important. I think it's important.
Another one of my sayings is, I don't want to be put in a box because someone might tape the lid down.
Right, exactly. I hate labeling.
Idea.
I hate labeling. I mean, I'm hoping that before we leave this mortal coil, that we will have been able to change our attitudes and realize that what we're doing is we're getting into ever decreasing circles, aren't we, with this labeling? Yes, she is smart and sensible. Yes, she is, Maria. Yes, she is indeed. And we need some of that. This is good common sense, what you're talking there. There should be nothing controversial about what you're saying. But because of what we've put children through over the last few years, for some people, what you're saying is controversial because it's going against the gender agenda. And there is an agenda, isn't there? When you're talking about in schools as one example, right? We're going about schools. Look at what they try to teach children in schools. Children do not need to know 50 ways to masturbate in schools, right? They don't need to know that. And they're being taught stuff like that. It's just unnecessary. How would you change it? You've got an insight. You're working with children. How would you change it? Because surely children need to be informed about sex education.
They do, but not until, you know, a bit older. I've helped set up learning centres in Uganda, and your learning centres are basically to help the child find their life skills, you know, learn their life skills, learn about themselves,
Right.
you know, set their moral compass. And then, you know, if they find a passion later on in life, you know, when they're, you know, young, perhaps 10, perhaps a bit older, they find their passion and bring their maths and English into that passion. So, for example, a young boy who likes his IT, let's, you know, let's say, okay, let's build a computer. You know,
that's literally more tailored towards individuality, isn't it? The problem is our system doesn't allow for individuality. And in fact, I don't think it even just doesn't allow for it. It doesn't want it. Because the moment that you discover who you truly are, it's a problem for the parasitical elite. It's a real problem. So I think, but yes, we need more of that. That's of course also why they overfill classrooms, isn't it? So you can't have any of that kind of individual teaching or anything else like that as well. A lot to change.
I was a teacher temporarily for just sort of like 3/4 of a year, and I was in the IT room, and instead of being the sage on the stage, I was the guide on the side. I made sure I went round to every single child individually to make sure they were on track, they were happy, they were doing what they want. And, you know, sometimes our conversations did sort of go off in the diverse, and there was a chap there who was saying about pride. I says, yeah, I went along. He says, what, miss? You went along? And they knew they could talk about practically anything with me. And you know, when I left, they says, oh, you're leaving, but you're a great teacher. In their eyes, I was a great teacher, but for the system, I wasn't, because my classes were loud. I was getting the results, but my classes were loud. You know, the kids weren't at their screen all the time. They were doing this and doing that. But I decided I was looking to do my teaching qualification. I do not want to be in this environment. We are not freeing our children. You know, my youngest son was home educated. It's the individuality, and them working as a team, them really working like and learning like we would as adults in a job role.
Right.
Communicating, liaising.
There's so much we could do to change. There really is. Yes, we love that, don't we? Yes, guide on the side. We love that. I've never heard that expression before. We all love that. It's a pantomime. Is it? Yes, Kenny, it is a pantomime. Classroom management issues. Tut tut, says the broad box. No, that's good. It's really good. And I love that approach. I think that's really important. We need to free children. We don't need to enslave them. But obviously the problem is, of course, they've been really captured. There's all queer theory, which has been put into our schools. There are some really odd people teaching children. I mean, you know, predators have always gravitated towards any environment where children are. And this kind of gives them it with bells on, frankly. Before you leave us, Shebear, tell us a word of wisdom from you.
Well, my normal saying is, if you want to laugh, laugh. If you want to cry, cry. And if you want to dance, dance. Just be you, have fun, and be safe.
Absolutely right. Yes, be happy. Absolutely right. Listen, thank you for joining us this morning, bringing a different angle to this conversation. It's an important conversation. And I'm really glad that there are people like you who are prepared to have it openly. Everybody, this is Shebear. There's a link in the description. If not already, I will put one in after the show where you can find out more about this phenomenal woman. Take good care of yourself, Shebear.
Thank you, Sonia.
Lovely
Take
to
care.
see you. Lovely to see her again. Yes, lovely to see her. Really, she's right. I've just put her back on the stage again. Right, there you go. She's right. We need to get rid of these little boxes. I don't like boxes. I do not like boxes. Sonia, you have to cover the SNP wanting to ban cats. What is that nonsense? I just saw that as a headline today. Is that real? Be you. Simple, great advice. Yes. Shebear, lots of hearts. Thank you, Shebear. Yes, absolutely. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Crazy Bunny, are they actually saying they want to banish cats? Because that's just beyond ridiculous. What's wrong with these people? What is wrong with these people? They are troubling, aren't they? Right, darling people, let's talk about a royal scandal. A royal scandal. Now, heck knows if I've got an image of Prince Andrew. Not that anybody needs one. Certainly not at breakfast time. Oh, 10:23 it is. Do I have one all the same? Maybe not. But I want to talk about it. So what we've learned over the last few days, no, I'm going to distract myself otherwise. What we've learned over the last few days is that Prince Andrew, despite telling the world that he had ceased involvement with Jeffrey Epstein after Jeffrey Epstein was found to be a pedo, we've now discovered they didn't cut contact at all. In fact, there were emails which have been disclosed in a filing by the Financial Conduct Authority, who are defending an appeal by former Barclays boss. And what we've discovered is that Andrew continued writing to Epstein and, in fact, said, we'll play some more soon. Now, I don't know about you, but when somebody has been convicted of abusing young people, their friend to then write to them in childish terms is somewhat disconcerting for me. Somewhat disconcerting. And these things I really have a problem with. No sweat, people are saying. He runs sweatshops. No sweat, says George. And obviously, so the thing is that we know absolutely that Prince Andrew was very good friends with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Both of them visited Buckingham Palace, the royal household. Both of them visited the Queen's own Scottish lodge. There were pictures of them taken there. And Andrew had said that his relationship was initially with Ghislaine, and then he got to know Jeffrey Epstein. Now, here's the thing that I can tell you about Prince Andrew. He's greedy and he wants money. And he saw whatever else bound them together, money definitely did, because Jeffrey Epstein had lots of contacts and was able to make lots of money. And that impressed somebody like Prince Andrew, who was obviously lived off us taxpayers for an awful long time. And you actually became known as Air Miles Andy at one stage because of the amount of private flights that he would take and how much he would fly off the back of the taxpayer. Someone high up really wants that, went quickly, wants rid of Andrew, or he's just a great distraction again. Now, Mels, this is what I wanted to say, is that Andrew is far from the royal story. And the conversation that I had with Andrew Gold at Christmas, which now, thank you so much to all the people who've watched it. I think we're up to 1.2 million views, which is absolutely fantastic. But the conversation I had with him is Andrew's story about Virginia Giuffre has always been a distraction. When you break it down, right, that story isn't that bad. Now, don't get me wrong. She's trafficked, absolutely. Absolutely was bad. But bear in mind, there's much worse that's being hidden. And so what the story we've been told is a 17-year-old had sex in the UK with Prince Andrew. Now, the thing is, in the UK, that's not illegal. That's above the age of consent. You have to be 16 for the age of consent. And I believe that this was used as an absolute distraction. The whole idea that the Queen gave a reported £12 million to Virginia Giuffre to stop this claim that she had against Andrew was not just to protect Andrew, even though Andrew was always her favourite son, and that was acknowledged. It was not to protect Andrew. It was to protect the ties. It was to protect who Epstein was also linked to, which included the Israeli Secret Services, Mossad, right? And so that was what it was about. It was not about, they did not give a flying fig about whether he did or didn't sleep with Virginia. They didn't. But The problem about court cases is it opens up to lots of other things, and lots of other things would have been brought out in the open in terms of disclosures. And that would have then shown all the links that Epstein had, whether that was to presidents past, present, and possibly future, or to pop stars, financial people, whomever it was. That was what that money was for. That was what it was for. Red Scotland said Epstein ain't dead. He's on their lands they've kept hidden from us. And that is possible. We cannot rule it out. Our media has been hijacked and run by people who are not only, a lot of them friendly, who were friendly with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. You only have to look at the images of like Toby Young, who was made a lord, obviously, last week, and Piers Morgan, who's now doing all the backtracking about C19. These were people who moved in those circles. That's who they were. Ian said he's definitely dead. And Christine, what about Puff Daddy? I'm going to briefly mention Puff Daddy in a minute, but not hugely, because we talked a lot about him. But so I think it's really interesting that this has come out, and all it does is just show once again that Andrew is a liar. You can't trust Andrew to say or do anything, really. The pair that, you know, they kept exchanging messages until at least February 2011. And on that day, that was when Andrew emailed Epstein and said, keep in close touch and we'll play some more soon. Who is censoring my comments, says Humphrey. I don't know. No idea. Andrew is lost, says Randy. Certainly something. And just a show of hands in the comments. You know that very, very famous picture of Andrew, Virginia, and Ghislaine Maxwell. Who thinks is real and who thinks is fake? You know the one I'm talking about. Yes, Swan, the rules have nothing but contempt for the ordinary people. And it's real. These types of years. Yes, fake. Mel says it's fake. Jacqueline says it's real. Teresa thinks it's real. Brett thinks it's fake. I think we're going to get a division of opinion here, which is great because we can always do with that. Yes, we can. We can always do with a division of opinion, and why ever not? And just talking about elite parasites and predators, where would we be without mentioning Tony Blair? Tony Blair will do anything he can to get digital ID. They have been on this forever. Tony Blair made a promise. I'm sure I've said this here before. In 2006, at the end of 2006, Tony Blair visited the the Forensic Science Services Laboratory, which was then attached to the Home Office. And he made a promise to them, and he came out and he talked to the waiting press, and he said that it was his desire for people ought to have some kind of digital imprint. He didn't actually word it like that, but that's what he was talking about. And that's one of the reasons why Labour leapt on the whole Madeleine McCann story, because they were able to use Kate and Jerry McCann saying that if they had that system, or if they had their system that linked up everybody, then they would have found it easier to find Madeleine. They use that. Tony Blair even looks like a minion of Satan these days. He looks atrocious. He looks atrocious. Have I got a current picture of him? Because honestly, when people talk about how you can tell what's going on inside somebody by looking at their face, Tony Blair is one absolute example of that. Let me bring up a current picture of him. Oh, how scary is he? I cannot look at Blair. Oh, crazy bunny. Sorry. I'm sorry about that. He looks terrifying, Mrs. Pyra. He absolutely does. Anyway, so now he's now saying, this was inevitable. He's saying that British people, listen to this, will accept less privacy in exchange for greater government efficiency, and off the back of a national ID card. And he's saying that if we have digital ID, we'll be able to get tough on populism. So he's talking about kind of like anti-immigration talk, that sort of stuff. Tony Blair, absolutely part of the agenda. Still half smiling. It's all a big joke when you're mentally ill, says John. I don't say this very often, but I have to agree that I actually do think that this man is evil. I do. The demons are trying to break out there. Yeah, you can see it, can't you? And Starmer, by the way, is the first Labour leader since Tony Blair, who has promised to embrace technology and turn the UK into an AI superpower. So Tony Blair's Institute for Global Change, that's his think tank, is absolutely influencing Keir Starmer. We should really be calling him Keir Tony Blair Starmer. because they're kind of like the same. That's why I had to laugh when Ingrid was talking about Margaret Thatcher, because anybody around here knows I could not stand that woman, not Ingrid, Margaret Thatcher. And Margaret Thatcher was like, to me, like the first stepping stone in all of this, Margaret, because what was it that they said that Tony Blair was Margaret Thatcher's greatest product or project? Do you remember? Anybody remember that? They are bred to do what they do. Yes, they are. This is insane. Why are they still around, these people? Blair is behind the scenes in Starmer. Oh, absolutely. He's very, very influential. This is a good image outside the British High Court. My daughter captured this. Protect the right to protest. Yes, indeed. We need to. We absolutely do. Whether Greenpeace and Liberty are going to be the ones doing it, who can ever tell? Starmer brought in together the agenda, realised. I can breathe now. Crazy Bunny, I'm ever so sorry about that. Sorry about that, lass. Sorry about that. Right. Moving on. What are we going to talk about? What are we going to talk about next? First of all, I want to say this. Did Israel co-opt the Tommy Robinson March on Saturday in London? And I ask because these flags are all over the place and people are not happy. Look, so what we have is obviously this wave of patriotism that is kind of like sweeping across the UK. It's absolutely anti-Islamic. It's very pro-Israel. This is not about Britain for the British, by the way. We've been co-opted as part of Israel's ethnic cleansing agenda. And it's horrendous. And David Curtin did a very good video about it yesterday, where he was talking about it. And I said to him, well done. He said, the reason that he didn't go, and he was glad he didn't, and it was because of this, because front and center were Israeli flags. And yes, Mads, I think we had to conclude that Tommy is still apparently working on behalf of an Israeli agenda. Certainly for a very long period of time, he was financed by Zionists. And also bear in mind that originally, what was it that Tommy Robinson was part of? But it was also known as the Jewish League, wasn't it? Do we remember this? Can we remember this? I've talked about this before. So we know that it's absolutely front and center. But this, let's be real here. If there's anybody or anything who loathes Islam, well, it would absolutely be Israel and Mossad, right? And yes, Blue Nomad, Israel is preparing to sacrifice the red heifers from Texas. Trump is wallowing in the swamp. Yeah, Mossad got their big nose into everything. Reba wants to know, has anyone actually visited him? Reba, we talked about that on Friday, and there's non-disclosure orders if you want to visit him, and people are actually being prevented from visiting Tommy Robinson if they have a social media presence. That's outrageous, right? So yes, they are co-opting this. I don't approve of it. It's not okay. This movement has been infiltrated. It's been infiltrated. And I mean, because really, at the end of the day, right, what does this flag, and there were many Israeli flags there, many, and I don't think that this movement should be co-opted by anybody. I don't care who it is, whether it's Islam or Judaism. This is supposed to be about British patriots, right? And isn't the UK, England, traditionally a Christian country? Where am I going here? Where am I going? We're all Mads, right? Whether we like it or not. What's that? The whole world. He's definitely a political prisoner. Love or hate the kid. And well, the way that they're treating him, they are treating him like a political prisoner. And I think there's no getting around this, right? But nonetheless, I think people should absolutely be aware that this movement has been co-opted and we should say no to it. That is my opinion, and I'm going to stick by it. I want to talk briefly about these people because I'm going to do a deep dive shortly. This is Lily Collins and McDowell. What's his name? Charlie McDowell. He's actually the film director's son of A Clockwork Orange star, Malcolm McDowell. Anybody remember that? And she is the daughter of Phil Collins. Well, they've just bought a new baby. Surrogacy. Now, I'm really opposed to surrogacy, and I'm opposed to it in all ways. I really am, and particularly in terms of celebrities. Why has Lily and her husband chosen this route? Are they unable to conceive naturally? Have they had fertility treatment? Or is it just the case, as with so many female celebrities these days, that they don't want the interruption to their schedule that comes with actually birthing your own child? And they also don't want their bodies to put on weight or to change in the natural way that comes with carrying a whole human inside of us. And here's the thing from my position, whatever the reason, I still think it's wrong. Surrogacy is wrong in my opinion, and I believe it should be banned worldwide. And the thing is, what we often hear is, well, they can't conceive naturally. Well, you do know that there is such a thing as adoption, right, people? You do know that, right? And celebrities do my head in, says Raquel. And you know, and honestly, if you're not able to conceive naturally, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to hear that. That can be hard. But sometimes you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to. And obviously, some of the reasons that people have surrogates is because they can't conceive naturally, because they have fertility issues, or because they're lesbian or gay couples, convenience and vanity. And every last one of those reasons is wrong. Every last one of those reasons is long. And I don't care what anybody has to say about it. I don't. It's, you know, it's one thing to end up with children who need substitute parents because their birth parents have failed them. It's quite another to deliberately, consciously set out to quite literally hire a womb to have a baby that nature never intended you to have. And I don't care who's upset by me saying that. And yes, there are lots of ways humans go against nature, including cosmetic surgery, but buying human life is really just trafficking. And we should call it that. These baby buyers proudly announce their purchases on their social media accounts, as this pair did. So delighted they were. You know, some ludicrous men going so far as to post themselves in a hospital bed holding the baby as if they just birthed the little soul. It has to stop. No ifs or buts. It's a practice that will be considered absolutely abhorrent by historians in the future. And I'm spitting. I'm so annoyed. They will see us as idiots. Right? On the one hand, exposing how many child abusers there are in the world. And on the other, breeding babies to hand over to people, sometimes strangers, without any guarantee of the natural safeguarding that comes when the baby is truly yours. Recent case, two men had surrogate children and they were trafficking these children. This is not a red flag or a warning. This is every loud sound the world needs to hear to wake up. Surrogacy is wrong. It would be great if President Trump addressed this as well. I say him because let's face it, this area is right up his street and no British MP or PM is going to have the balls or ovaries to stand up to the surrogacy lobby. What about Deputy President Elon Musk? What's his thoughts on surrogacy? Well, he's not Deputy President. He looks like Deputy President. Yes, he does. And sending you love too, Ian. Don't like any of it. Don't like any of it at all. Fabile said, wait, Tommy told Andrew Gold he was not being paid by Mossad. Yeah, of course he's not being paid by Mossad, but he has been paid by the Israeli lobby. That's what's happened. Okay, let me talk to your, and I'm not saying he still is, but what I'm saying is that the movement has been co-opted by the Israeli lobby, and that is not good at all. Before we go on to our deep dive, I just want to, here we go. This is from lovely Nikki, I believe. Chemtrails at Nikki. How do I pronounce this? Chemtrails at Peranuthno. Where is Peranuthno? Sounds like somewhere in Cornwall. Thank you, Sonia. Photo was taken today, Sunday, 2nd of February. Regards, Nikki. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you for sending that. We appreciate that. Always appreciate that. And I meant to bring in this video on Friday. This was me on Twickenham Green. And here you go. And people often ask me for an example of the difference between a contrail and a chemtrail. This is a contrail. Look, it's already breaking up. The airplane is up there, as you can see at the end of it. And the trail it's leaving behind is already dissipating. That is a condensation trail. A chemtrail would be hanging heavy in the air. That's the big difference. And you can just about hear my dog whining, saying, why are we filming? My dog hates me filming, by the way. And so I had a number of people who contacted me saying, because what I said was the George Michael song, Praying for Time, when he says on the wounded sky above, was he actually talking about chemtrails? London Lady suggested Cloud Busting by Kate Bush. And I looked at the lyrics, London Lady, right? But every time it rains, you'll hear in my head like the sun coming out. Oh, I just know that something good is going to happen. I don't know when, but just saying it could even make it happen. And it goes on about on top of the world, looking over the edge, you could see them coming. And I thought it was really interesting. The song is actually based on Peter Reich's 1973 memoir, Book of Dreams, which explores his memories of his father, Wilhelm Reich, one of Sigmund Freud's earliest students, and who actually later became known most famously for his esoteric theories on energy, which I think is interesting. Yes, Kate Bush, absolutely. This sun blocking will stop our food, says Craig. Right. And also somebody asked me about Arla the other day. I can just say to you that Arla hasn't disappeared. You know, we talked a lot about Arla, that the what was it? The additive that they were putting in cow feed, right, to kind of reduce cow farting. Well, actually, Waitrose was one of the stores that had been contacted by many people saying, "Are you selling? Do you use Arla products in your own essential range?" Now they don't, but what they do is they have their own separate Arla lactose-free mature cheddar cheese, and that is available in Waitrose, and it is very clearly labeled. You will not get this wrong. Arla have really stepped up their advertising on TV. Well, they would. They've got a huge campaign to countenance, haven't they? I want to go into this. This matters. This matters to me. This matters to me a lot. There are some stories I might not have time to cover today, and if I have to leave them until Friday, then so be it. But I'm going to start bringing in some images from this. And obviously, Grammys 2025. It's happened yesterday, and the biggest headline is really about Kanye West and his wife Bianca Censori. She was nude. This is indecent exposure. He may be a handler, she may be his. Either way, they're both sick, and enforcing their porn on everyone else is absolutely not acceptable. Not acceptable. So anyway, the Grammys went ahead as normal. Beyonce dominated the list of Grammy award contenders. She had 11 nods. She won Album of the Year for the first time. And I'm only reflecting on Grammys, not because we talk particularly about celebrity around here, but because this woman died during a Grammy weekend. Whitney Elizabeth Houston. I mean, what can I say about Whitney Houston? Well, first of all, a phenomenal artist, absolutely phenomenal artist. And she was discovered very young in the church. She was signed to Arista Records by Clive Davis, and he will feature very largely in this comment that I'm going to say right now. She was signed by Clive Davis, who also handled Diddy and a number of other people, including Barry Manilow. But Whitney Houston, well, Whitney Houston was undoubtedly Clive Davis's biggest asset. She sold more records than anybody else, than any of his other artists. That is a reality. And Davis discovered her in her teens. He nurtured her talent. He did shape her into the best-selling artist, or one of the best-selling artists of all times. And yes, she could sing the roof off of a house. Clive Davis founded Arista Records in 1974. He actually signed Barry Manilow, Aretha Franklin, Dionne Warwick, Patti Smith, Westlife, Alicia Keys, Bay City Rollers, on and on and on. He founded Bad Boy Records with Sean Puffy Combs. It became the home of the Notorious Big, and we're going to be talking about him in a minute. But on this Grammy weekend, Whitney Houston breathed her last. February the 11th, 2012. She's more commonly known as the American singer, actress, and film producer. She was known as The Voice for selling more than 220 million records worldwide. She had immense crossover appeal. She influenced the breaking down of both gender and racial barriers, no doubt about it. She was married to singer Bobby Brown. They separated after 15 years. They had one child together, Bobby Christina, who died in similar circumstances to Whitney. We're going to be talking about that. And on February the 9th, 2012, Houston visited singers Brandy and Monica and Clive Davis. And they were, let me just remove this from the screen. And Brandy and Monica were with Clive Davis, and they were promoting their new single. And their new single was called It All Belongs to Me. And here we go. Let me bring these in. And what happened was Whitney essentially kind of bum rushed this recording that they were doing and went in, and a very strange thing took place. So this is Whitney. You can see her. She's giving a hug to Clive Davis, who is in the middle. Brandy is in the black. Monica is in the black and white. And Whitney handed a note, which you can actually see in the top picture, to Brandy, which to this day, Brandy has refused to say what that note said. Right. This is 2 days before Whitney Houston died. She handed a note to Brandy, and Brandy has refused to tell us what that note said. Now, did that note have anything to do with drugs? Brandy is the sister of Ray J. And in Hollywood circles, Ray J has been around quite a lot. Ray J is the reason that the Kardashians have the career that they have, because he was involved in the sex tape with Kim Kardashian that Kris Kardashian sold, because all mothers sell sex tapes of their daughters. Well, pimps do. Ray J was said to be involved with Whitney Houston, although many people allege that he was actually getting drugs for her as opposed to being romantically involved with her. But Monica is Ray J's sister, and Whitney handed that note to Monica, and it was all really, really odd. It was very, very odd indeed. And so then what happened was, and that same day, Whitney made her last public performance when she joined Kelly Price on stage in Hollywood, and she sang Jesus Loves Me. And she was actually a bit disheveled. And that was the thing, is that things were getting tough for Whitney. She'd spent rather a lot of time on drugs and drink, and it was difficult. It's always difficult in those environments where you end up with having been right at the peak, the absolute peak. And then Whitney was not at the peak anymore. And that was for a number of reasons. But 2 days later, on February the 11th, 2012, what we heard was that Whitney was found unconscious in suite 434 at the Beverly Hilton Hotel. She was submerged in the bathtub. And paramedics arrived about 3:35 p.m., found Houston unresponsive, performed CPR. She was pronounced dead at 3:55 p.m. The cause of death was not immediately known. But several months later, the coroner ruled that she had died from drowning, with the effects of heart disease and cocaine use. The manner of death was listed as accident. And as I say, this coincided with the Grammys, annual Grammys Award. It was actually the 54th one, and which actually took place the following day. But on the day that Whitney was found dead, Clive Davis's pre-Grammy party that Houston had been expected to attend went ahead. It went ahead. And this is where it gets really, really sick for me. And this is where I struggle with a lot of it, right? I want to bring in some more images because here's the thing. I'm going to be really clear here. I believe that Whitney Houston was killed, right? I'm just going to say it there, just straight off the bat right there. I believe that Whitney Houston was killed. And at Clive Davis's party, as I say, it went ahead. It's a huge party every year that takes place at the Beverly Hills Hilton. Well, you know who owns the Beverly Hills Hilton, right? The Hilton family, and that includes Paris Hilton. Here's actually Clive Davis at his party when his protege is lying dead upstairs. And they left her upstairs until 1:35 in the morning. From 3:30 in the afternoon and 3:55 when she was pronounced dead, they left her upstairs above the party, right? Her dead body. If that doesn't sound sacrificial and ritualistic, I don't know what does, right? I don't know what does, okay? And so the thing is about Whitney Houston is absolutely no comment about Whitney would be complete without the mention of Clive Davis. Okay, he's a music industry titan. As I said, he's been influencing people with in music for many, many years. He was the big boss at Arista Records, which he founded, and he did discover Whitney as such. And the pre-Grammy party, well, guess who was there? Diddy was at that pre-Grammy party, as indeed was Britney Spears, Tony Bennett, Diana Ross, Jessie J. And it was really this. Here's what's kind of sick. Davis told the crowd, simply put, Whitney would have wanted the music to go on and her family asked that we carry on. Well, that's not what Shaka Khan said. Shaka Khan was interviewed by CNN and she refused to go to that party. And she said, absolutely not. It shouldn't have gone ahead, that there was something wrong about it. Jane Fonda was there. She wrote why it had to go ahead. She was actually there to give a prize to Richard Branson. Now, I want to set this scene for you. There's Whitney Houston dead upstairs. Richard Branson is downstairs receiving a prize. What anecdote do you think that Richard Branson may have talked about receiving that prize at that Grammy party? He talked about being circumcised. Why would he talk about being circumcised at the age of 15 in such a somber event? These people are sick. They're absolutely sick. There's no doubt about it. And Jane Fonda said it was so important that it went ahead. And it was only when she got home that she realized that they had been partying below Whitney's body. That's what she said. And as I say, well, she does recall the oddest anecdote to do with Richard Branson, which I thought was really, really sick. Chaka Khan was furious. She said, no, Whitney would not have said the show must go on. She's the kind of woman who would have said, stop everything. I'm not going to be there. They should have stopped it. They didn't stop it because it was for a reason, And as I say, 2 days before her death, she interrupted an interview with Clive Davis to give Brandy a note. And this is where I think it starts to get really kind of, and I've never seen anybody question what I'm about to question now. And I think this is important too. And that is, Brandy and Monica were promoting their new single, and their new single, which involved Clive Davis, was called It All Belongs to Me. And it was a song about a dysfunctional relationship. And let me just see if I can get the images that I want to show you. And in the video, so bear in mind, this is where I think it's important, right? In the video, which when Whitney died, the day after that, Brandy released a little clip from the video. And the video actually showed Monica, it might have been Monica who released the clip, but it showed Monica actually wearing a T-shirt with Whitney Houston's face on in this new video for the new song that they were promoting when Whitney came in and gave a note to Brandy. Now look at those images. I really want you to look at them, check this out. So you've got Monica in the top image. She's wearing a Whitney Houston T-shirt. In the middle image, she's in a bathroom with a man. She's wearing a Whitney Houston T-shirt and she's about to cut his tie. I interpret that as cutting ties with Whitney Houston. And then the final picture is the dastardly deed has been done, and there's somebody in quite sinister outfit in a bathroom. And she did pass on Brandy's birthday, Iman. She absolutely did. And it's interesting because Brandy's album was called 211. Which was obviously Brandy's birthday. And that was her album that was released that year. It was called 211. And I've never gotten over this video. And it ends actually with Brandy and Monica coming out of the building and going on and on about how, and I think the lyrics are also really interesting. Let me read you some of the lyrics. If I can find it here, It All Belongs to Me. Yeah, it was... loving you is hard. I feel like I'm about to hurt myself and I don't want to do it. I'm loving you so hard and the way you act ain't been no help. And then it goes on to say that I'm taking back everything, right? I know you're mad, can't take no more, but put that back, that ain't yours. Have a fit, slam the door, but leave them bags on the floor. That belongs to me. Those clothes, those cars, those rings, and that MacBook, that belongs to me. It all belongs to me. Now, that was part written by Usher. Usher was one of Clive Davis's production men. And I just felt that that was a message about Whitney. It was about, you've gone off the rails. You are no longer manageable. We cannot handle you. And we are cutting ties with Whitney. And on top of that, this video, which came out in March, less than a month after Whitney had died, was dedicated to Whitney Houston. Those diamond rings, Ian knows the song. And I think it is, isn't it? I think it says in there. Yeah. And so I think that's really interesting. And then, of course, it didn't end with Whitney. Very sadly, it didn't end with Whitney. And so then what you had was, and I always follow the money, but her daughter, Bobby Christina, died January the 31st, 2015, in circumstances that were tragically similar to her mum. She was found unconscious in a bathtub in her home, which she had inherited from Whitney. And we must always follow the money, because when Whitney died, she left behind a $20 million fortune in inheritance, which initially went to her only daughter, Bobby Christina. And the instructions left by Whitney in the will further states that if Bobby Christina were to die unmarried without children of her own and had left no will and testament of her own, the estate would be divided among Whitney's living relatives. Well, that's where I started to have a bit of a problem, because some of Whitney's living relatives are a bit problematic. And one of them is her brother Gary, who is married to Pat Houston. Gary was a bodyguard who was actually on the door outside the hotel when Whitney died. And Pat Houston was Whitney's manager, and Pat Houston knew how to exploit this situation. And shortly after Whitney had died, Pat Houston signed a deal for a reality show that featured Bobby Christina. And honestly, as a mother, my heart broke seeing this child exploited across the screen. She was off her face half the time. She was either drunk or on drugs. And it was clear that she had a problematic relationship with her boyfriend, Nick Gordon, who Whitney had essentially adopted as like a young son, and Nick then died. Are we getting that? Whitney Houston died. Then her daughter, Bobby Christina, died in similar circumstances. And then Nick Gordon died shortly afterwards. Okay. And as I say, I always say, follow the money. So obviously the money will have gone to the Houston clan, and that includes Pat Houston, and that includes Gary. Two people I think are big question marks over their head. And Leola Lewis, Bobby Brown's sister, has a real problem with what has happened. Leola Brown is in no doubt whatsoever that both Whitney and Bobby Christina were murdered. They were murdered. And the thing is that I'm not pointing the fingers at anybody here, but the point is this, and that is, first of all, that Grammys was the most watched Grammys in 15 years. The one where Whitney died. And people were watching it because they said they wanted to see the reactions of people there who were at the Grammys to see if they were impacted by it. So that's the first thing, right? The most watched Grammys in years. Then Whitney's music absolutely surged again following her death, right? She sold 8 million records worldwide in the first 10 months of the year she died. Her music had dropped off. She wasn't selling, not in the same way. The single I Will Always Love You, it returned to the Billboard Hot 100 after almost 20 years away. She set a Guinness World Record for a female artist by placing 10 albums inside the Billboard Top 200 simultaneously, and she didn't make a cent from it. Everybody else who was left behind fed off her like they had in life. Right. And so, as I say, who's earning off her in death? Record labels, publishers, members of her own family. Right. And I repeat, Whitney Houston was taken out like so many other music industry legends. She had become unmanageable for her handlers. She had damaged her voice through drugs and drink, and she was worth more in death than in life. That was the reality. It is appalling, but true. And I still to this day find it shocking that we are to believe the official story. The official story makes absolutely no damn sense. And on top of that, the coroner's report, which was released, I think, about a month and a half after Whitney's death, it said that they believe she had been dead for at least an hour. Well, that doesn't even add up, because it was her assistant who found her, and her assistant left the hotel room at 3 p.m. to go out and run some errands. She came back at 3:30 and found Whitney. That doesn't mean she's been dead for an hour. So that's on the official coroner's report. So it's already wrong right there. It's already wrong. She needs saving. Who needs saving, Sasha? I don't know if there's anybody to save from this lot. Is there? It's so sad. It's so sad. Yeah, I think there's a whole collection of people who've been taken out early. That is the reality. But I just think that it can't possibly be a coincidence that Whitney Houston died, the boy that she essentially adopted as her son died, and her own daughter died. What the hell is going on? And as I say, follow the money. There's an awful lot of very rich people who never contributed to the powerhouse that was Whitney Houston. Rest in peace, Whitney. You deserve so much more. You deserve so much more. They took her out. They took her out. Tomorrow is a press conference. Moving on. Tomorrow is a press conference to do with Lucy Letby, Nurse Lucy Letby. I'm going to make this quick. David Davis MP will be chairing a press conference announcing new medical evidence from an international panel of neonatologists led by Dr. Shu Lee. And Dr. Shu Lee's work was actually used to convict Lucy Letby. And he's come out in the British media this weekend saying, no, not happy about it. And he's now going to be taking part in that. And on top of that, the CCRC, the Criminal Case Review Commission, has now apparently assigned 3 people to look at Lucy Letby's case. How interesting is that? How interesting is that? I think that's interesting. So we will pick up more on that on Friday. I'm going to try and get to that press conference tomorrow if I can. I see we're now at 11 o'clock, so I don't want to dawdle people. Just to say, Thank you so much to everybody who contributes to what goes on around here. Thank you to recent donators and subscribers, to Nathan and Alan and John and Margaret and Gail and Laura. Thank you so much, all of you recent donators. We really appreciate it. There are links below in the description. Obviously, it takes money to do what I'm doing here, and so any donation at all that you can contribute to building Wake Up will be greatly appreciated. And all forms of donation, please. And when I say all forms of donation or contribution, that includes liking, sharing, subscribing. We're nearly at 100k. Let's do it, people. Let's do it. And thank you all for your lovely messages. I truly appreciate it. And just to say, some people don't want to use PayPal to donate. I've had emails this weekend saying I don't want to use PayPal. Absolutely fine. So by Friday, I will have a new account set up with a completely different organization, an independent financial organization that hopefully you can use, and you'll feel better about using rather than PayPal. And right, hold the line. You're very welcome, Vanessa. Sugar Plum, can you do memberships? What do you mean by membership, my love? Because obviously the whole thing about what I do is it always has to be free. It has to be free to everybody. So, but you can subscribe, you can give a regular monthly amount. If you're a Patreon, you also get to see a monthly behind the scenes video, which my patrons will tell you are slightly nuts. Yes, Patreon. Thank you, Gwyneth. I truly appreciate that. Everything helps. Never even heard of PayPal. Cavan, are you having a laugh? You having a laugh? Right. I want to come to this. Hold up. Wait a minute. What are you doing? And I ask that because is that your choice or did someone else choose it for you? So many people do what others want them to do. Well, I'm here to say it's time to do what you want to do. I'm going to repeat it. It's time to do what you want to do. People pleasing is so yesterday. It's time to move on from that. The thing about people pleasing, it's a temporary measure for a quiet life and just to garner approval, but it's not sustainable in the long term. People grow up, mature, and become resentful for having spent a lifetime doing what other people want them to do, whether that's your job, your appearance, your partner, or making online content. You will never be truly happy while you follow the path set out by others. And there's numerous reasons why people do as they're told. There's pressure from parents, which can be really problematic depending on different cultures and nationalities. Some children are raised in family businesses and it's expected that they take up the reins of the family business, either from the grandparents or the parents. Some people just go along with what others want them to do because they feel that they're disappointing their families, their loved ones, if they don't follow into the family business. And I mean this with all kindness. That was someone else's choice for a career, not yours. It's time to say no. It doesn't matter if you have benefited from it by being in the family. That's what being in a family is, okay? Families benefit each other. That's what it's all about. But it doesn't mean you have to tread the same path as your grandparents or your parents. You are your own grand creation. And I love that lyric, and it's from one of my favorite songs. Do not let others dictate your actions. You are not here to become a shadow of your greatest creation or to be a pale imitation of someone else, but to be a living, breathing form of you. Okay, we can look at an image of like Kanye West, for example, on the Grammy carpets with his almost entirely nude wife. I mean, as an aside, how do you find a wife that makes your first wife, Kim Kardashian, look classy? But that's an aside, obviously. But the point is I believe that her looking like that is him. I believe he's handling her like that. Apart from anything else, I think that he's so porn-addled that he can't even help himself. But I don't think for a second, if that's her choice, then, I mean, both of them should be banged up. But you take my point. I think a lot of people, when we look at them or look at similarities to them, we're like, that person has been shaped by that person. And Kanye West is infamous for this. He did the same thing. He famously, when he got together with Kim Kardashian, he went through her wardrobe and threw everything out and got her a whole new wardrobe because he's a narcissist and he wants to control. But that's typical of what happens is narcissists always want to control you. But whether you're dealing with narcissists or just people who are good people who want you to follow in the family business, the answer is still the same. No. This is your path. This is absolutely your path. And it's time for you to tread it, people. Yes, it is. Maybe she is his handler, MB. I've thought about that. Yes. It's very disturbing behavior either way. Only you can change your path, dreams, and goals. Just believe in yourself and walk that path. Yeah, and walk it. Walk it, walk it, walk it, because you've got this, right? I mean, the thing is that the reason I end the show this way is because I want people to remember their own power. A lot of the news that we hear is very disempowering. It's about what's going on that is out of our control. Well, the one thing in your control is what we end every show on, and that is you. And honestly, I can't think of any better. Oh, that's good, Tink. If the road sweeper was paid and valued like a barrister, stay-at-home parent had a wage for doing a decent job raising children, people would do the jobs they wanted to do, not ones they have to pay bills. And that's a whole other thing. But I get your point. I get your point. I absolutely do. And this is what we need to be heading towards. We're so advanced. How are we not able to manage something as simple as our own path, right? Anyway, I drew on what I consider one of the greatest empowering songs that has ever been written, and that is I Am What I Am. I absolutely love that, and I'm going to read some of the lyrics, right? My particular favorite version is the Gloria Gaynor version, and it's so powerful. I am what I am. I am my own special creation, so come take a look, give me the hook or the ovation. It's my world that I want to have a little pride in, my world, and it's not a place I have to hide in. Life's not worth a damn till you can say, I am what I am. And on that note, I wish each and every one of you the most terrific week. Thank you for being here today with me. Thank you to all of our guests. Thank you for watching us live on YouTube and X. And thank you for watching us on Catch Up, be that on Rumble or Spotify or wherever you find us. Thank you so much. I am very, very much appreciate that. And I love you too, Shebear. And thank you for being a lovely guest and for being so open. I really appreciate that. Help people on the way. Yes, let's do it, people. And we can do that as well. Each one teach one and help somebody up. Stop looking down on people and help them up instead. Thank you, Short Order Cook. I want to say thank you as ever to my two wonderful mods because they are truly fabulous and we love them to bits. And thank you to everybody for making this show exactly what it is. And you know what happens from next week, people? From next Wednesday, 5 to 6 p.m. we have a new show. We're still developing it. It won't be the same as Monday and Friday. It will be slightly different, but we're going to kick ass as ever. And I just want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. And I will see you on Friday. Have the most sensational week.
Time to wake up with Sonia Poulton.
Love you, people.